Well, now let's check out on these 5 profitable businesses that you can start with 1 million. By the way, 1 million is equivalent to like 10,000 US dollars. Okay, people have been asking me on the comment section, hey Joseph, would you mind if you can share with us some of the businesses that are quite profitable? Well, bearing in mind that people are saying, hey, right now the area of the environment of business that friendly and what have you. First of all, don't have that mentality, okay? On this board, I'm gonna share with you. And by the way, these are my favorite businesses. You can check them out, all right? And by the way, don't forget, if you're watching me for the first time, this is Good Joseph. I always make a video as far as or in anything related to investment, money, finance, how do you plan your finances and what have you. And if you don't want to miss any good video, make sure that you subscribe, stay tuned, and make sure that you turn that notification bell on so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new good video. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for your eyeballs. Let's get on the business, okay? Don't forget, our budget is cash shillings or Kenya shilling, that is 1 million, okay? That is 1 million. And that 1 million is actually, for those who are watching and are not Kenyan, that is equivalent to like $10,000. Well, not really per se, it's more or less the same, okay? It depends on when you're watching this video. Although I know 10,000 US dollar is equivalent to around 1.2 million or 1.3 million, but let's give it or take around that particular figure, all right? Let's get to the business. Before I even start telling you what business to start, I hope and I'm assuming that you know there's some foundational knowledge that you need and you must have before you start any business. You must be good at what we call the financial management. Okay, financial management. You know how to organize your money. And I told you when you're operating a business, you should have 3 businesses or rather 3 accounts. One, the operational account. You must have the personal account. And the last thing, you must have what we call the savings account. I discussed in details about that, and in case you need me to discuss more than that, then I can be able to make a video out of that. Anyway, that's aside. Today is not about how to run the business, it's about the ideas. Number one, obviously, it's a pharmacy related business, or pharmacy is actually like in Kenya they call it a chemist. Are we together? All right. Or we can say generally this is a what? This is a health industry. This is a health what? This is a health industry. By the way, I don't know whether you know this. There is a lot of money to be made in health industry. But of course, I hope you make it in a rightful manner. You don't manipulate people. You don't do nothing bad. Just do what is supposed to be done. If you can get yourself into the pharmacy business, then you are good to go. I know you're like, oh my goodness, I don't have the qualifications and what have you. You can be the investor in that particular business. For example, does it mean that if someone somewhere is a billionaire, has the money, you cannot be able to start a hospital? Does not mean that you'll be treating people. You can be an investor, then employ the professionals to run that particular thing, to offer those services. So you can also be able to offer yourself as an investor in this particular business. You ain't gonna be solving those prescriptions from the doctors and what have you. But if you can be able to employ the professionals to do that, you're only putting the money on the go, then you can. It's like you starting, say, a beauty business, yeah? And then of course we'll say you don't have the skills or something, but you know how to run the business, then you can be able to do that. But I always recommend, before starting any particular business, go first, learn about it, know its nitty-gritties, and of course understand its operational cost, the pricing, your competitors, how to scale the business, and what have you. So the pharmacy business or the chemist, you can actually get yourself into this, and probably this is how you would organize your 1 million. Okay, on this matter, of course, when you're dealing with pharmacy, you ought to have yourself a very nice, good looking place. And of course, there's some of the rules that you have to follow. The pharmacy in Kenya, or the pharmaceutical services are sort of regulated by Kenya Pharmacy and Poisons Board. I know it's a body that is actually mandated to, by the way, my first degree, I'm actually on a health related field. Okay, I told you guys I'm a medical research officer, so I kind of know some things on this area, okay? So I'm not talking in a vague way. So you have to be regulated by that. There must be some certification out of that particular thing, because if you don't, then of course you're gonna rub shoulders with the government, and that is not really the right thing to do, especially when you're operating a new business. Now you have to have that. Then of course you need to have yourself a counter, you know, the operation, the where you'll be working from, and of course then you're gonna have yourself the shelving, you know, the shelving of that particular business. You're gonna need what you call the branding. All right, you're gonna need some branding there. you know, some banners out there bearing the name and the services you offer. Some people do have a pharmacy business or a chemistry business with other services, like, you know, they can have a doctor time to time coming to visit people. You can have maybe, let's say, a consultation room if somebody may need you know, those services per se. You can link up with some doctors working in different places, and therefore if somebody say needs some gynecological services or whichever the thing it is, then you can be able to have a link up to somebody who is a professional qualified doctor. Therefore they can actually be able to see their doctor in any time they need. Now see, the counter, the shelving, and the branding here stands for the graphic designing, those banners and what have you, the painting and what have you. Probably that you can actually throw in something like, depending with the size of the pharmacy, of course. I'm going to operate with an average size, then you can actually throw in something like 200k at most, but you can try to work out with around 150k out there. But let's just give it 200k for that making of the counters and what have you. Again, don't forget, if you may have less than $1 million, does not mean that you cannot be able to build a counter. I'm actually using an average of this amount of money to come up with that particular thing. Then the licensing and the permits and what have you, you can put like well, again, if you were to go with the licensing, the permit, you can plan. I usually advocate you can plan and pay it for in advance. Let's say maybe you set aside something like let's say they give you something like 150,000 on the same 150k, that is per year, right? Per year. And then of course you set aside the salary. So you don't open a business then you start, you know, relying on it to pay, you know, its workers and what have you. You can decide to, let's say maybe you get somebody who is not really, you know, with a lot of years or something like that, but you just employ somebody who is well conversant. In Kenya, probably you're gonna pay them a salary of, let's say, a minimum of like 18k, you know, all the way to even 100 or whatever. But let's be logical, around 40k. In between that bracket, you can be able to negotiate yourself with them and see how much you can pay. Let's pick a random number here. Let's pay them 25k. Again, depends on where you are putting up this particular business. Then it means you have 25,000 per month to pay, and then you have this 150k to pay per year, so that you can be having that particular license. And I would advocate that you set aside this amount of money, let's say for example for 6 months. So 25k multiplied by the 6 months, then you can set aside that amount. Let's say you can set aside like 200k for the salaries, so that you can give your business a breathability allowance. And also you can also set aside something else, and of course the rest you do what? You buy what we call the stock that you need to have. If you can start with a stock of at least 500k, that would be great. Or let's not even say 500k, let's even say you start with a stock of around 250k. You start there and check out how the thing will actually go. See, you have the money to pay for your worker or the employee that you have there. You've paid for your permits and licenses, and you've of course set aside some cash to actually run the operational cost of that particular business, like let's say water, electricity, you know, for the next like 6 months. So therefore you're gonna give yourself the business to actually have a room for growth, you know, and such kind of a thing. So the pharmacy business, it's a business that you can actually take a look about if you're interested to start a business before this year ends. The next business that you can actually go with is the business that deals with, I know you guessed it right, timber. There is a wood business. I know that sounds strange. I know that's like, what? Is there money to be made out there? I'm telling you, if there are guys who are minting millions out of that business, or out of you know, people, it's people who are dealing with timber. First of all, timber is a luxury, if you didn't know. Okay, and of course timber, it's a business that can actually give you what we call, you know, of course in a business you have to look for something called the marginal difference between the purchasing and the selling, or the buying price and the selling price. You find that the pharmacy usually has a very big marginal difference. You can even make a profit of 50%, 40%, 80%. At times you can even make 100%. And to some extreme cases, you can even make like 200% of what you bought. You can buy something for 20 shilling, you sell it at 100 shilling. That's like 5 times whatever you bought it anyway. That happens, okay? But what happens is that there are some businesses that you find that their profit margin is actually very, very low, especially when you're dealing with the convenience store and these things that people consume each and every day. So that can actually be a limiting factor. So the timber business, It's a brilliant and amazing business that I would highly recommend that you get into it. Probably, sure, 1 million won't get you like a whole of a big timber business, but if you can get the necessary simple 1 or 2 machines, that will be great. You can start first by leasing a place where you can be able to start that business. Can be and should be mostly at the roadside. You lease the place. Okay, once you lease the place, of course, you write an agreement, let's say for 3 years, for 5 years, or 2 years, depending with the owner of that particular piece of land. And if you have any, then that's an added advantage. Once you do that, you can do a simple semi-permanent perimeter wall. Okay, then after that you can get yourself maybe a 2 or 1 machine, or probably you might need 2 machines. That would go for approximately like 400,000 or 450,000. And then after that you can make yourself like a makeshift office from that particular place. Then the rest of the cash, of course, you have to have the permit and the licensing. Then after that you need to also buy the product. And by the way, you can start by not even having the machine in the first place. Okay, first you create the personnel or the clientele. Once you create the clientele, then you can bring a machine worth like 400,000, 500,000 and something like that. What do I mean? You can liaise with other bigger, better, or maybe let's say existing timber yards where they are already selling these things, and then you can be able to buy the woods, the ready prepared woods, and then you can resell at a profit. And then the moment you realize now you're creating what we call a base clientele, whereby now you can be able to go ahead and purchase that particular machine rather than buying the machine is idle. That's time now you're creating what you call the clientele. That may not really resonate well. So basically, those are the things that you may need to do or know or understand or start by as far as the timber business is concerned. It's a highly regulated industry, especially knowing that in the globe that you're living right now, we are looking forward into having the, people are conscious about the climate change, the things to do with the global warming, the carbon and what have you. So obviously it's a highly regulated area of which you need to adhere with the rules and regulation of the land, whereby you make sure that at least you have all the certification. Again, whenever you're running a business, please minimize and or eradicate, if possible, any rubbing shoulders with the government, because you don't want to behave in such a way that every time the government officials are there, to ask you where are your permits, where are your licensing, where are you getting these woods, where are you getting all that and that may not really resonate well. You can imagine that you have the customers at the base or the place, and then such is happening. It's not really a good thing. The other industry that you can get yourself into, this one is a tricky one, is an oil business. Okay, in Kenya we call it petrol station. Yeah, I know, be like, oh, a billion, can I start a petrol station? Obviously no. The answer to that question is no. It's a petrol station, or a gas station if you're watching this from the US. It's a capital intensive business. And what I say, get yourself into the oil business, I don't mean necessarily you get yourself into like a whole of a new, what do we call it, a petrol station. You can buy yourself a pump, maybe a double pump, a double nozzle pump. Probably will cost you at most 480,000 at most. Okay, and then you can get the licensing from the EPRA and what have you. I've ever gone to somewhere whereby you find somebody has a single pump. I know nowadays is very hard, by the way, and I stand corrected on this particular idea. There is a lot of regulation. Nowadays you find somebody has actually been prepared a very nice and good and big petrol station, but they are not able to get the licensing. Back then it used to be a little bit easier. You can actually go ahead, lease a place, buy yourself a tank, quote unquote, bury that tank underground, buy yourself a single nozzle pump. Maybe you can buy at a half price of this, around 200 or maybe 180 or thereabout. Okay, again, you can confirm the current market, the current pricing in the market right now, and then after that you can decide either to go the diesel way, you can decide to go the gas way, that is the petrol as we call it, or gasoline if you're watching from the US. Then you can be able to kickstart that particular business. Again, I have to give a disclaimer on this particular one. It needs a lot of regulation. Of course, energy has a lot of regulation because of course it runs the economy, not only for a country but globally as we speak, as we transition towards the electricity way. The fourth business that you can go with, of course, it goes the business by the name spare parts. Again, I'm not saying it's a guaranteed one, you start this then everything will go good, but spare part is that engagement that can actually mint you good cash. All right, automobiles will be there, or if you're dealing with the motorcycles, of course they will be there. So what you can do is to be able to source the parts. You can source the ex-Japan parts, you can source from the ex-Dubai parts, you can source from variety places, or maybe Germany or whatever the place it is. Then you can be able to leverage on that. I've seen people, if you go like into Nairobi, you're gonna find a whole street dedicated for spare parts. You know, that entire street or stretch is actually known for dealing with the spare parts. Then you can also get yourself a piece of this, you know, by simply getting into that and you know, have yourself with the spare parts business. These may not require like a huge regulations. No, 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 no. The only thing that you need to do first before you start the business, if you know nothing about it, go leverage it by learning from people who are already running that particular business, and you can be able to get some information there and you can start. And it depends. I usually see some people doing what we call the market segmentation. You find somebody deciding on the particular spares to buy or sell. It can be the lighting spares, it can be the body spares, it can be the engine spares, it can be, you know, you get what I'm saying. So you find it depends. It can be wheels, it can be rims, it can be such. So it depends. And it can be oil parts and lubrication parts and such kind of a thing. So in the spare parts, it depends. But when you're getting into the business, unless you're very good at one particular thing, unless you already have a clientele, and if you do not, then I say you get into it holistically. Of course, I'm not saying that you start importing engines and gearboxes. No, you might actually you might actually start with 2 or 3, and then your money is exhausted. So, or even sometimes one. So, what you need to do is that leverage on those small spare parts that are actually needed, like, you know, riveting, you know, like those oils, like some other parts that you know that will be needed time to time, bushes and what have you. So it's good you start with those and the lighting sources and such. So once you start with that, then you can keep on leveraging on what that may be required. Again, study the demand of that particular business so that to know what you should stock more compared to the other. So when you have that combination of such kind of a concoction, you can now tell this is where I shall actually do what incline towards. And that is close that particular business, that particular video. We can finish up with the agriculture. And this is not just agriculture. This is a what? It's an agri-business. It's an agri-business. You know, this is where you're getting into the agriculture for business purposes. Okay. And when we say it's an agri-business, we simply means that you're getting into a business, excuse me, you're getting to the business of agriculture, whereby, well, with a million you can actually, let's say you have yourself a land, no, of course a million will actually lease you a land somewhere. But now here you might need quite a good sources of water. You can actually buy yourself a greenhouse or set up a greenhouse. And once you just set up yourself a greenhouse, you can get yourself into the farming of, say, capsicum. You can get yourself in farming pepper. You can get yourself in farming what you call the coriander. You can farm some things like you know, name them, the vegetables. Actually, vegetables tend to have a good leverage compared to others. Okay, you can also decide to go the animal way. You know, you can, by the way, that party can start you two businesses at the same time. You can go a little bit in the up country, buy yourself some goats, look for a place where you can be keeping them temporarily as you look for the market. And of course, some section of that particular money, you can start yourself a choma zone, choma bite, or maybe say a butchery or something like that. Then start, you know, roasting meat, start selling people, be a vendor where you can sell meat and such. So you're having two businesses that you're running. You have a place where you've kept your sheep. You know, of course, you buy them from the auction market. Not really auction market per se. Okay, we call them so, but it's not really like an auction. You know, auction is where, okay, you get what I'm saying. See, now you buy those animals from that particular place, you take them to the where you have actually, you know, list a place, or if you have any, and you keep them there. As you look for their market, say you buy at 5,000, 6,000, you sell at a difference of 2,000 or even 1,500, depends depending with the situation. And of course, you can set up a place whereby you can also be, you know, consuming your own product as such. So it's like kind of, you can be running two businesses at the same time. And you know what? That does not necessarily mean are the only businesses that you can start with $1 million. There are very many things that you can do. You can start importing things. You can start getting yourself into a particular niche. You can get into the beauty business. You can get yourself. It all depends. Someone is actually in the cereal business and they are doing great. All what you need to do is that ideas are there and they are unending. All what you need to do is to study that what you're interested on. Then you leverage on that and you start that business, and I wish you the best out of that. In case you may need the business plans of all this, I have them ready, and a copy goes for only $280. That's like $3. Grab that number of mine, text me or call me. You can get any copy out of this. See you in the next one.